Welcome to Getting Rich Together, the show for successful women who are looking to take their financial futures to the next level. I'm your host, Shama Bunton. When I started my wealth building journey, nobody knocked on my door to give me all the answers. So I want to talk to the experts who've done it and bring the answers to you so we can discover the right opportunities that will help us achieve the financial futures we've always dreamed of, together, and have fun doing it. So let's dive into this episode and start getting rich together. I am here today with the beautiful and brilliant Meredith Noble. Everyone, you guys might know Meredith for the ways in which she's been able to create a very successful entrepreneurial business, making money by helping others make money through grant writing, which I think is a really incredible niche that not too many people have really thought about. And while today is not necessarily about Meredith's experiences in entrepreneurialism, I think today we're going to get a little bit about what it's like to grow a successful business, but more importantly, what it's like to be able to live an expansive life. Meredith, you have had some incredible life experiences. You've created a life that is so deliberate with intention. I'm so excited to have you here today on Getting Rich Together. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Let's do this.
We're not going to start with what it's like to run a successful business and grow it and scale it. We're going to start with what it was like to be a little Meredith. What it was like when you were 5, 6, 7 years old. Where were you? What was life like? And more importantly, what was money like around you as a young girl?
Absolutely. Well, let's go 1 year earlier because I think age 4 was the best. So when I was 4, I grew up on a cattle ranch in Wyoming. I'm 5th generation. And as the oldest of 4 daughters, I ended up being called out to the ranch often to help my dad. So I was out and we had horses pulling sleighs of hay that we'd be pitching the hay off of. I was working literally at age 4. I would be driving the truck that had the throttle increased enough that I didn't need to reach the pedal. It would pull itself forward and try not to hit the barn and get stuck on a frozen cow pie. It was a really cool way to grow up. What's interesting about it now that I know a little bit more of the money messages that were imprinted at that time, ranching is all about independence, hard work, no breaks. The rich, perhaps slimy. How did they just got that. They didn't earn it. It ruins them. And specifically, my dad was saving our ranch because my grandmother had put the ranch into significant debt. And it was like, it had come to the real holy grail when I was born of like taking the ranch over and completely turning over the finances. So imprinted in my mind was debt is bad. Debt almost lost our ranch. And to be frugal. I remember when I would earn something, my mother would bring me her jar of coins. She had this little jar and you could pick out what you wanted. But I didn't understand the value of a quarter versus a penny, right? But I did understand that concept of like, I'm going to save these. Like I was a really good saver right off at the young age. Like I won an art competition at the national level, got $75. The newspaper calls the Pinedale Roundup and they're like, what are you going to do with your prize money? And my answer was, I'm going to save it.
Get out. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So those were all the money imprints that I had at a young age from being raised as a little cowgirl.
It's so interesting, this concept of rich is bad, but poor is bad. Where do we fall, right? Are we to aspire to have wealth? But what does that mean? And if we don't have it, what are the other mixed messages? That I think is a really interesting and somewhat confusing way to grow up and see these different sorts of messages. And so as you were building your nest egg at a young age, saving the prize money and starting to think about what a life might be like for you, let's say in high school, for example, I feel like up until high school, we don't really see a lot of stuff. We're kind of like in our little bubbles. High school, getting into college, we start to have a lot more exposure to things. When you were in high school, did you envision yourself to be an entrepreneur? Were you still in savings mode? Did you pick up a part-time job? Or perhaps were your weekends and summers spent on the ranch? What did it look like?
Absolutely. A couple stories come to the surface. My senior year in humanities class, the teacher was bringing in local entrepreneurs. One of them spent 75 grand on the spot buying Apple stock. And most of my class missed it. I don't think they realized right before our eyes, he just traded money and bought that much stock. And at the time, my mind was just blown. The next presenter were these two guys that have been business partners for years. And they started out building storage units and then a hotel. They told their story about their origins and why they chose to be entrepreneurs. I knew them as their kids were the wealthy kids in school. That was really the bug of, I actually want to go into college for business school. And before that, I had thought I'd be an international major. I wanted to travel. I wanted to see places, right? But the entrepreneurship was actually there all along. Also, that year, my boyfriend at the time was older than me, and this is just so Wyoming. You ready? He was chewing tobacco, right? So he had found Swedish snus tobacco in the packets. He was ordering it and it was way cheaper than buying Copenhagen. I thought, oh my gosh, like there's all these redneck kids in my school that chew. I could sell them this Swedish snus way cheaper and pocket the difference. So I literally I know, selling Swedish snus that was like $1.80 to me for like $7 each out of my locker.
So like talk about every retail 101 thing: pricing, margins, unit velocity, buying bulk. Did your parents know about this?
Oh, heck no. Not only was that an illegal substance that I'm selling at school, but those were all sort of the experiments, right? Experiments where I would test things and have fun, see what would happen. Sort of like the bad version of the lemonade stand.
But a much more profitable version. Yeah. That's so funny. Given that you were inspired to create, right? To sort of like see what's possible in the world, flex your muscles, of the adventures you went on in high school, did you pick up any interesting lessons for yourself that were like, okay, I'm going to try this differently on the next thing I sell, or I'm going to approach this a little differently? What was your mindset towards tasting the flavors of entrepreneurship and being adventurous?
Well, I would say that entrepreneurship, that bug really only hit my senior year. And so that was when I started to make experiments. Otherwise, I was squarely in trading time for money. My strategy was simply just to work as much as possible. So I always had the ranching job, right? But there would always be something on top of that too, whether it was waitressing or whatever. I was just working really, really hard. I went to college weighing 97 pounds because I was just working all the time. I had 3 different jobs from 4 a.m. until the end of the day. I was a troublemaker until I discovered this. And I think that's actually kind of a common story. I think some of the best entrepreneurs were the worst kids because we were just smart and it wasn't being channeled in the healthiest way. But that creativity is still there. If you think about drug lords, they are some of the most remarkable entrepreneurs ever.
Yes.
I mean, distribution, marketing, team management, all of it is just absolutely incredible. Transition started to occur in college. I was taking business school classes. At that point, it was still like I still just had so many failed attempts. One of them was I bought day-old donuts and I would try to sell them to drunk people downtown, and I called them drunken donuts.
You're so smart.
My senior year in college, I got into swing dancing, really into it, got really good, like doing aerial flips and stuff. There was this swing dancing bar on the Idaho state line with Washington. And this guy sold hot dogs, which he probably made a killing. He had a fire outside, like a fire pit. And I was like, what if I sold s'mores? I could sell s'more kits. So I convinced him to let me use his fire to do that. I made all these s'more kits, but you can't put a marshmallow with a graham cracker in a bag and not have the graham cracker go stale. And I realized like, I'm just trying to like sell these stupid s'more kits and I'm not dancing, which is what actually makes me happy. So that was when I decided 3 failed food businesses. Food is not my jam, but those are all just like fun experiments. So I think often as we get older, we stop playing like that. We put too much pressure on ourselves. We think it has to succeed. One of my biggest lessons from all of that we all need to remember is just keep playing and having fun and experimenting with less pressure on ourselves.
During high school, during this hustling phase, working all the time, you're clearly saving money. Were you spending any of it? Were there any memorable purchases where you were like, I saved all my money and I bought X? Or was it just, I'm saving and I'm saving and I'm saving. I don't know when I'll need it, but I know it'll be there.
Well, in that phase of saving, I have my biggest money regret. My old Catholic priest had a mint condition Volkswagen bus and he offered it to me for $500. And I said, no, I'm saving for college. I had $20K in the bank, which for an 18-year-old is incredible. If I'd even known what that $500 bus was worth, I would have, it's $30,000. It was amazing. The things I didn't buy might be my bigger regrets. I remember buying books my first semester of college and being so proud, going to the bookstore and paying for it all in cash, $1,200 worth of books. Then, of course, you get into college and you realize we need to just buy cheap and used. I remember thinking, I will be successful when I can eat out whenever I want. And I would limit myself to twice a month, eating out, going out and having dinner. That was I was really disciplined. The definition of success evolves. Right now, my definition of success is that I can be an anonymous donor whenever I want. Yeah. So just right now, recently I heard about the Boys and Girls Club losing their van service to help single moms with after school care. And it's like, I want to have the level of wealth in which I can cover that for a year. Let it be anonymous, but you've got the money to just help where you want to. The definition of success for me has evolved. I can now eat out whenever I want, and now I don't want to, and I eat at home more, right? But yeah, those are some formative moments early on.
That's so beautiful, Meredith. As you went into university, started training more formally in business and really starting to sort of maybe have ideas take shape, how did you start to decide on what you were going to parlay? Obviously, with a very high curiosity of the world, go and be and do and have anything, which in many ways is a gift. In some ways, it's also a curse, right? When you feel like you can do anything, it's like, well, what am I going to do? How do I want to exercise these talents and gifts? As you were working your way through university, how did you start to land on these cornerstones or anchors for yourself as you were going to launch into a career?
Great question. My senior year, I stumbled upon Charlie Hohen's Recession-Proof Graduate Guide. It's a PDF. Charlie used to be the executive assistant for Tim Ferriss. The premise of his book was go up to anybody you want to have a conversation with, figure out what they have a need and offer to do it for free, blow it through the water. And now you have so much of a better leverage point than trying to negotiate a high salary when you're unproven. I don't have the privilege of working for free. I have rent to pay. I like the idea of listen, draw out what someone needs. If you have a solution, present something to them of a test project, a little thing you can do to help solve that problem. That led to a conversation. I was interested in the water industry with a wastewater department director and discovering that they need help with their education and outreach for stormwater, drew out what he needed help with and where the pain was and riffed on ideas with him. That turned into an internship that wasn't even an internship. They created it for me. And on day one, I was Googling what's stormwater. Right? Yes. But what was so cool about that is that was the beginning of understanding this concept of informational interviews, the art of a curious conversation. It is now, I think, the secret to my success, the mandatory aspect of what I teach in the collective, my program. It's what I advise anyone on that's trying to pivot their careers or their lives, or even just have a wonderful life, create opportunities for yourself on the other side of curious conversations and the skill of it. That seed was planted right when I graduated college. I did 45 informational interviews in 90 days. And this is before you pick up the phone and have Zoom calls. I went to these locations, talked to all of these people. It set my career in motion. That's how I fell into grant writing. That was how I had multiple job offers at the same time. And this was coming from before, the before strategy is, okay, you're a graduate in the thick of the recession. I was applying for no jobs were taking, I applied for Pita Pit and I'm gluten-free. The strategy of finding work, it was when I realized everything has changed. This is the way to do it. You can create opportunities for yourself out of thin air. And that was really what launched me from college into my career.
It's incredible. Where was your college located? Were you still in Wyoming?
No, I went to Gonzaga University in Spokane, Washington.
Wow. Okay. So what's exciting also is you're also in a university and in a different territory, right? So you're launching yourself without having all the networks or family connections and starting to find your way through that. I think it's such an inspiring story, Meredith, because there are so many young people. Every year people graduate. It's a really tough market out there, like how are graduates supposed to do it? And my gosh, it feels like the narrative never gets better. It's always so saturated. And so to hear you take this very entrepreneurial approach to getting a job and being hired is so exciting. And so when you did land and say yes to something and you had multiple offers, did you go into sort of a phase of negotiations or choose the job that really lands and sits well with where my intellectual interests are and my heart? How did you decide, given that you now had options in front of you that others did not?
Well, it's an interesting question. I want to back up because we're gapping a bit. Yes, I moved to a community where I knew no one. So what did I do? Because that's a big piece of success. Everyone struggles as adults to make friends. When I first got to school, I did this 5-day outdoor program and this girl she's wearing moccasins, tiny shorts. She's super small like me. And she sticks out her hand and says, "Hi, I'm Sophia. What's your name?" I thought, oh my gosh, that's how you do it. This is how you make friends. You just need to introduce yourself and put your hand out. That was such a formative moment because I think so often we forget how to even establish connection with strangers because it's in these connections that we're one degree away from everything in our life. The college had this Gonzaga alumni mentoring program. Most people don't think to utilize that until the spring semester of their senior year and they're after something. They want a job. I used it right off the bat to get a mentor. That couple that lived locally took me to nice dinners once a month. I could go to their house. They helped me find a mechanic when my car needed help and even paid for it. The bill was such a surprise to me. I made it an intention to build a support network from the beginning when I first got there. It's never too late. You're never too old. You haven't been there too long to build that. Now I talk to other moms. I'm a new mom and I'll hear people say, it's so amazing you've got your support network. I don't have that. And I'm like, you have to build it. I don't have family here, but I have built it. I have built a support system. So that's something I've done everywhere I've gone and in every phase of life. And I do think that's a helpful nugget for people. Don't be afraid to stick your hand out and say, hi, I am fill in the blank. What's your name? That's as simple as it is, works wonders.
I love that so much. Sometimes when I go to conferences, I will not sit in the front. I'll come in the back and I'll just hang out and I'll be like, hey,
I'm actually the opposite. I will go sit in the very front because I don't want to be distracted. I want to take it all in. And then, yes, network in the hallway.
Find me by the food,
Yeah, for real. Yeah, but anyway, leaping back to what you were saying, I went the traditional route of getting a 9-to-5. I was actually freelancing because that was how I found opportunities. These opportunities were coming back to me like, could you help us develop this proposal response? Or could we hire you to write this one grant? We can only pay you $50 at the time. I was like, are you kidding me? My mind is blown. I was freelancing, and that freelance experience is what I then used to land a full-time job and get a great salary out of it. Often when we think about consulting, people think they have to have all this experience before they go out. But actually, freelancing is one of the best ways to get recent, relevant experience to grow that side of your business or use it to get into a job. And that is what I teach inside the Global Grant Writing Collective, because it is an incredible way to create opportunities with that whole how do you get experience without getting the job? This is the bypass for that. So I went the normal 9-to-5 route, got a job. It was salaried. I did the thing. I was a rising star in the company. I was an entrepreneur within the company, growing grant writing into an actual service line, having a long leash for someone my age, getting to be very, very creative. It was a wonderful thing to leave my corporate gig, but a series of things happened that caused me to be like, it's time. I am thankful for the 9-to-5 experience I had. It was quite formative for what then launched into the entrepreneurial journey.
And so to double click on this corporate life, did they offer you, 401ks when you started working? Was there sort of the built-in corporate infrastructure that you jumped on board onto? What were your mindset around your spending, your income, and how you were looking at this corporate job? Did you keep any freelance gigs as you had a corporate job? What was your mindset around things?
I wound those down for the most part so I could focus on that exclusively. But I did at a networking event meet a financial advisor. I started a life insurance policy at age 23, which I regret. I put away the maximum amount of a 401k. I got a good CPA. I did the things financially of a traditional 9-to-5 person, and I mastered that quite quickly. Within a year, I felt like I was doing it, right? I was saving at least 40% of my income. My quality of life had still gone way up. I felt really pleased and happy with what I was able to buy. All of my needs were met. I was saving great. I felt like I had things dialed because I was a 23-year-old with a financial advisor. So that was all good when you're 23. And now fast forward to I'm 27. So I've been there for 5 years. All of a sudden I realize, oh, I see my glass ceiling. I'm working really hard, but maybe 10 or 20K more is available to me. I have no mortgage, no debt, no kids. I am in the best opportunity of my life to take a risk, to take a pay cut, to bet on myself, because that has unlimited upside. No one is limiting my earnings besides my own creativity and mindset. Whereas in that gig, I was like, I'm working so hard. The lid's not that far away. And so that was when I realized I'll never break away. You'll have just enough to be happy with your life, but not have the financial ability to truly chase your full potential.
Going from something that feels more stable and predictable gives you a framework. I think a lot of people love their corporate gigs because it's like, oh, this is it, and I can plan everything around it. But as we both know, nothing in life is guaranteed, and corporate jobs are not the most secure, as some might think. But when you're young, it's an anchoring stability point. Taking a leap to starting something requires not only a great deal of courage and bravery, but also a sense of self-awareness to what is it that I truly need to survive on? How much can I commit to this business? Can I pay my rent? Can I take care of myself? What did you create for yourself that gave you a sense of physical, emotional security to help you make these decisions?
That's such a good question. There's some leading indicators you're on this path. When your dreams become nightmares, that's an indication your subconscious is trying to speak to your conscious. I ran a series of tests and experiments. For example, I was like, what if I sold my car to help me bridge this gap of needing money? And can I get around by bicycling, paying for cabs, and taking the bus? So for 30 days, I literally gave my keys to put them in a drawer. I did not drive for 30 days, no exceptions. I journaled every cost and what I did to tally up, like, what is the financial benefit here of going this route or not? And I, at the end of the month, realized that my time is valuable and I can't be waiting at a bus stop that never comes. It's actually cheaper to own a car. Figured that out. Then I moved to managing my money in Mint and being like, what do I need to get down to as my true monthly budget? I got clear on that. Then it came down to what skills do I need to pursue this other idea I have? And I dropped to part-time so that I could pursue a coding course. Learning how to build websites in HTML and CSS was my first investment in up-leveling my skills. I saw there was a gap. All of those pieces were happening for probably 9 months. But again, I still wasn't fully ready to make that leap. I came to work and the health and safety lady bothers me about something else. She was always on me for stuff. I was always in trouble. I would often bike or ski to work, and your gear is obviously sweaty and you got to go home in the night. At the locker room, I would hang up my gear so it would dry. She got on me for my gear being visible and not in a locker, but the locker had no air, so it would still be wet. When she confronted me about that, I was about to walk into my boss's office for my annual review, which had been rescheduled 3 times. And in that moment, I was like, I'm done with this. I don't need to spend time with someone like this in my life. This is dumb. I walked into that office and I said, I'm leaving. My last day will be December 4th. They sent vice presidents from other offices, one in particular, sat me down in a fishbowl office and grilled me and said, you can't leave. Tell me what job you want. You come back tomorrow. Tell me the pay you want, all the things. Everybody, of course, is getting excessive amounts of coffee because they're just watching this spectacle happen. There were tears, like she got me to the point of crying. There was standing and yelling at each other. It was just too little, too late. I'm out. You're not taking responsibility for your career. I'll never forget it. And I said, actually, I am taking radical responsibility. I'm taking so much responsibility that I'm taking all the risk of what I'm doing next. I'm going to figure it out. I'm not expecting anybody to save me. I'm saving myself.
So there.
Yeah. It was sporty. Of course, then you launch, you're doing your thing. I had a completely separate idea in mind for a business. I call it my 3-month MBA because that was when I learned that ideas don't mean businesses. They do not equal businesses. And you must have a clear problem to solve. To launch that, I did end up taking out the company stock. I had like $7,000. I used that money to seed the business. And then in 3 months, when I realized that my idea was a complete flop, you think it would be so stressful. I literally have no idea where my next paycheck is coming from. And yet my stress was a fraction of what it was in the consulting environment. I was getting out in the middle of the day, which in Alaska in the winter matters, to go ski, go take a bike ride. I was actually having incredible travel and trip experiences on a budget just because I had the freedom to do it. Even though I didn't have the financial certainty of where my money was coming from, I was so much more relaxed. My life quality was just 10x. And
it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a magical feeling when you're able to unchain yourself and see that what you want is possible and that the universe has got your back.
Yeah, I was just willing to do anything. We need to make a YouTube video about this, about the things I did in year 1. I took a part-time job with the transit department. And then because I didn't want them to know that I was outsourcing their work, I outsourced a bunch of the stuff they gave me on Upwork cheaper, and still billed for the time. Which they would die if they knew I did that. I went back to the ranch and helped with calving season. That was when I had the idea of what if I taught grant writing online? I had that idea when I was out in the fields, snowstorm, and just be like, I should try that when I get back. 30-day challenge, build a course. So, you just did so many things, so scrappy about it. I am going to make this work. One of the things that was most helpful is I had next to my desk a list of things I said no to. As much as it sounds like I was doing everything, I actually was saying no to almost everything because I was making a bet on myself myself. And that meant no athletic races or social life went way down. I was really focused because I knew I was like, you're in a survival mode. And I think what's cool about entrepreneurship is that if you are not actually giving value to the world, you are not paid. Whereas in a bigger organization, there is the fluff that can allow non-value givers to kind of get paid for a really long time. So that feedback loop is not tight. Whereas in entrepreneurship, it's extremely tight. And that was the gift of that first year.
That's incredible. And so at that time, you also had your savings that you had built up over time. Did that provide any sort of like, okay, I know it's there if I need to. Had you decided outside of the 7,000 that you took out, were you like, all right, this is how much runway I have? How calculated was the analysis or how you looked at this cushion that you had built for yourself?
Great question. I think I might have had 10,000 in savings, maybe. I knew what my expenses were in my monthly budget. I was going to spend less than 2,000 a month. So I knew I needed to be paying myself at least 1,500 a month, and then I could use a little bit of savings to close that gap. And so I knew right from the beginning that the business had to pay me and the business paid me. So that $7,000 I put into the business, some of that came back to me as payment. But anytime I started to make money, like when I started doing grant writing workshops, I paid myself. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they don't pay themselves at all or enough, such that you are chronically subsidizing your business and never getting your pricing right because you're not being honest with the true cost of being in business. My rule is if you pay yourself 50% of what you make up until $100,000 in revenue, or is it $250,000? Up till $250,000 in revenue. So you pay yourself 50% because that was how I knew I was being honest with the cost of my time and valuing it appropriately. That's how I managed that process. I was quick to making sure that little contracts I was pulling through or projects or whatever. Obviously, I just started grant writing consulting again when I ran out of ideas because I do know how to make money doing this. I thought I would never do this ever again. I felt like I'd sold out, and look at me now. I think that was one of the most important bits that people can take from this is be honest with paying yourself enough. Do not subsidize your work by undervaluing your time.
Such an important life lesson, no matter if it's your first business or your third business. I feel like it's
a forcing function.
Yeah, it's almost like the idea. I see this happen way more with women than I do with men. This idea of let me sacrifice it all for the business. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're not okay, right, the business will not be okay. And sometimes I think that we forget that. So as the company was starting to get its inklings of a business model and you realize that, okay, holy bananas, I've got something on my hands. How did you then start to correlate beyond that first 50% up until 250, your personal wealth growth as you were starting to then also grow the business? What were some of those initial steps that you introduced? And how did you start to think about, okay, now I'm at this level, I have these new goals once you sort of align with what you are meant to be doing? So what was the unfolding like and how did things start to scale up personally and business-wise?
My financial situation did not change for 3 years. The business grew from, a $100,000 business to a $250,000 business to $500,000 to $1 million. Like we were doubling every year. And what a large reason why I was able to do that is because I was really aggressive about reinvesting in team and growth to buy back my time. I met this amazing gal who ended up becoming my co-founder. She's the reason for our growth hugely. When she came on board, that was June of 2020. The pandemic had just hit. We were going gangbusters with the online course, but also a grant consulting business. And she came to me and said, this is the best 5 hours of my work week. She was a subcontracting project manager for me. She's like, what could I do to come work full time? I looked at the finances and I was like, she's already made the money. She's brought so much value. That's how you know you have a good team member. So I said, look, I can pay you what I'm paying myself, which at that time was $50,000. I'm now in 2.5 years into this business and my salary was $50,000. And I said, I can pay you that same amount. And then the rest will be in forms of slicing pie equity, which is a model I borrowed from Mike Moyer. You can read his book, Slicing Pie. It's very intriguing for startups about how to split equity where you don't decide on an upfront percent. You actually earn it over time with labor and cash contributions. So on the day she started, she had 0% of the pie equity. But as every paycheck came, she earned a little bit more to honor the fact that she wasn't getting the $100,000 salary she was worth and leaving to come work for me. Get it? So I just want to emphasize that I made less for actually a fair bit of time. And then we made it around, we almost had 2 near deaths in the business, not human deaths, but business deaths. Looking successful by all accounts, but not having a viable business model, I drove it into the ground. I ran out of ideas twice. In December of 2020, I lost $20,000 and had 4 weeks of runway left. I surrendered to the fact that my ideas were not working. And Alex suggested we need to have a learning day. We need to get out of the forest. We need to zoom out. We need to just look around. Who has solved this problem before? What are our resources? They're called learning days, where anything you are kind of curious about, you can go do it. There's no tasks to be done that day. And she found this gal who spoke to all of my pain points. I thought, okay, I'm a little vulnerable right now. If we join this $10,000 program, I don't even know how I would pay for it. I can make the first month's payment, but I don't know how I'd cover the rest. Am I just being vulnerable because she's so speaking into my pain? But I was like, we got nothing to lose. I got to learn from somebody else because me trying to DIY it is not working. And so we did, and we went all in, and it was the darkest time of Alaska, late November, early December. We did a ton of informational interviews. I really zeroed in on my favorite client. I tripled my prices. I made it so it would be monthly recurring revenue and built the new offer, built a new webinar, did it all in 3 weeks, changed the website, copy, everything. Went home for the holidays to breathe for a second before coming back into the new year. Sales were coming through evergreen, like people were buying. So we went from literally losing 20,000 that month to a year later had done $500,000. I don't even remember what the monthly recurring revenue was at that point, like 40K. And I remember on my birthday, 6 months in, was the first time I felt like my shoulders came down and I realized like, okay, we have a business model. This is actually scalable. The offer is great. The customer is great. Everything about it is so aligned and it's so right. And that was when, grew it to $1 million the next year after that. And next year after that, we didn't double. It was like 1.4 million. But like still, it was like that was the moment that like finally I was starting to feel like, okay, I can pay myself more. We have a little bit more to work with here. Even then, I was still pretty conservative. It wasn't until like I remember August of 2021 was the first time I was like, I can truly take an owner draw, which we could have done it before. I just wasn't. I was being really conservative. Yeah. And I remember I went and I bought new furniture. I spent like $7,000, bought some new furniture, and I went to Lululemon and I bought stuff. It was like I just opened the floodgates of my spending, but it was because it was the first time I was like, I can afford to do this. I felt like all of this pent up, holding myself back. That was when I finally was like, I don't need to keep driving a beater Subaru. I'm going to go lease a new car. All of these things started to change. And then 2 months later, I bought my first home. My expansion of where I was at financially changed in a pretty short amount of time, but I do think it was because I was comfortable with delayed gratification.
One of the things you mentioned before we started recording was around worthiness and this feeling of deservingness, right? What I think worthiness is. Now I feel like I can receive this. And so in the last few years, it feels like things have really changed in so many magical ways with respect to the business and the areas in which you've chosen to expand your life. Can you please share where your money, time, and energy is currently invested and where you're looking at building right now across all the different sectors that have your interest?
Great question. You will only receive what you believe you're worthy of receiving. I hate the whole affirmation of I am worthy. I've had kind of beef with the like worthiness. I am enough. So like, I hate these affirmations, but under them is an interesting truth, which is that we truly will only have what we think we deserve, what we really think is appropriate for me. And so when I started my business, January of 2018, I read this article in Forbes that said less than 2% of women business owners hit $1 million in revenue. 3 times more men do. I was like, this is terrible. I got to figure it out. I'm going to get to $1 million. And that was my North Star. Every year I'm hit it. And guess what? When I hit it, I got sick, fatigued, really in poor health. And it was actually because emotionally I was bored. I had solved the problem. I had figured out how to get to $1 million without setting a new goal for myself. And somehow just saying like, now I want to become a $10 million business just didn't have the same heart purpose. I was motivated because I wanted to, it was a different drive, right? And then our growth flatlined. A big part of expanding into having the life we want is it's so important to have that vision first, or else you're not going to get there. Around that time, I felt like the business was stuck. I was bumping up against my own self-inflicted ceiling. Everyone's like, you got to have a vision. Anyone that's a leader tells you, you need to have a vision. You're like, what happens when the vision is not coming through? You're trying, but you got nothing. That's where I was for 2 years, it felt like. this lackluster vision. And then it started to come through. I don't want to be a one-show pony where like I have built a business that is successful, but because I like to be a creative tinkerer, rode the profit of a wonderful business because I need to mess with something. I need something else to mess with where my creative energies can be flowing without it sabotaging the current business. And what that ended up becoming was, I love this place in remote Alaska called McCarthy. It is next to the largest national park, Wrangell St. Elias. It's historically so cool. It's this old copper mine town with huge glaciers that it sits above. It's cool because you're in this backcountry, but you can also get a really good espresso or a fantastic meal. Usually, those aren't things you get in the remote backcountry, right? And I thought, I want to have land here. I want to have a place where other creative professionals can come do deep work, but they can also get in touch with being in the dirt, being more free range. So I was like, I'm going to chase that dream too. And so last year, or February of this year, I bought 10 acres of land. The price per acre is quite a bit, but yet my nervous system was totally okay with it. No problem. I got this. Seeing that change in me from what I considered to be out of reach even a year ago is completely different. The new norm, the new high bar is just different, what I can handle emotionally. But that condo was $220,000. And at the time I was like, it was safe. I can do this easily and still save 50% of my income. This is a safe spot, a safe bet. And now we just put in an offer on a house. It's incredible. Such a cool place. And 5 times the price. What's cool about it is that I have completely changed my capacity of what I know I can handle and receive and what I expect for myself. And it actually happened pretty quick, like over 2.5 years. This is because I was relentless on focusing on growing one business. I was not spreading myself wide. That business gives me a fantastic owner draw that allows me to play, that allows me to have safety. I want to add that financial security is something I was always striving for. That was the thing I needed. Realize if you don't realize you've got it, you're never going to have it. That changed. Realizing I have so much abundance. All my needs are met. 1 foot in gratitude with 1 foot still in desire. And now that's the path I walk.
Amen, sister. That is beautiful. I am resonating throughout my body in so many different ways. I could not agree with you more. We have to recognize where we are at. And I'm so proud of you for giving yourself that gift. That is something I wish for every person, but every woman.
There's the real talk bit I have to drop now too, which is that when you push your boundaries, you expand your capacity, you find new edges, you get scared and you want to go back to safety. And I self-sabotaged my progress on developing this project over the summer. My family and I bought an RV, took our 7-month-old baby into the mountains. And I set a tent on the property to use as an office. And I did all the things to move this forward. I'm going to be so ambitious. And then I kind of stalled out and I started playing small. I didn't tell anybody about my dreams. I got scared of what if I lost it all? What if I get overextended? I froze. And what was so fascinating about it was realizing, oh, this is so epic. Like I'm pushed a boundary. I've rebounded off of it because I smacked into the wall. I have to remind myself that I am in fact safe and secure and I can do this. This is my new norm. I think that's just important to talk about. It's not like this has just been some smooth sailing linear journey of expansion. Like I've expanded and then I've contracted and then I've expanded again and contracted a little bit, right? Like it's this journey of ebbing and flowing that I'm actively in as I push that limit. When you're experiencing imposter syndrome, when you're feeling truly scared, fear, that's actually the gift. That's when you know you're playing to your edge. That's when the real fun begins.
Yes. So Meredith, as you are looking forward, legacy building, impact, what is on the horizon as you sit back, maybe from a tender age of 105 years old, what is the legacy that you hope to leave with this body of work and who you are on this planet?
I think this is a great question that I could spend a little bit more time journaling on because long-term thinking we often think of as in 5-year increments, not in 20, 25, 75. Generational, even better yet. If we were to channel the Alaska Native wisdom, they think in terms of 7 generations at a time. So I would say that my dream out in McCarthy is that I want that to be a space that is a 50-year project. It is a lifetime body of work that just gets better and is passed on multi-generationally without being lost. I understand being raised by a ranch, how conflict can be very destructive. So I would like to make sure that have the forethought to create a physical space that is welcoming for generations to come to continue to own and expand and make it their own. That said, I think people spend too much time getting hung up on what's my legacy going to be when, what's your impact going to be today? Because that's what matters more. Or were you good to someone today? Did you help someone that needed it? Showing up today matters more to me than realizing, because I've seen it, like my families grow and families also die. Things have life cycles. And yes, I would love to be the matriarch of an epic Alaskan family in blood and in who you call your own family and your network and your community. But at the end of the day, if I'm helping as many women as possible try their hand at entrepreneurship, I am living into my purpose and I am open to all of the ways that can express itself.
I love that. I'm also visualizing you as the matriarch of this epic Alaskan family. There's a show that my husband and I like to watch called Castles. They talk about all these different places around the world, and there are these epic matriarchs that they talk about historically that found ways of creating profound social change within commerce. I see that for you, and I'm holding space for that.
I love that because I have been channeling the vibe of wanting to feel more wise. Like that's the word I often come to when you think about like what are the words you want to embody in your character. That feels like wisdom and matriarch go hand in hand.
Yes, I love that. I can see, though you may not be envisioning a queen's sort of crown, I can see one on you, Meredith.
I'll own that crown.
Yeah. Two final questions. Yeah. I think I have some hints of this through our conversation today, but we often think about money in all of these really serious ways. I certainly have great examples of using it to pursue your dreams and passions, but are there any other favorite ways in which you love to spend your money?
I love to spend my money on my style lately. When I went to a conference in Puerto Rico, it was Rachel Rogers' event, her first ever. And the women who showed up were gorgeous. Everyone was just fully expressed. I had struggled to pack for that trip. I don't know how to do warm places, or I just always felt like my closet was not bringing me joy. It was not expressing my identity and helping it come through. So it was a bit of a journey, but I found this gal that is an engineer by training who really broke down style as a science. When I worked with her and found what looks good on my body, I love to buy this one specific brand, find that stuff on Poshmark, get it from them. Anytime I want to reward myself, I'll buy something directly from the website, feeling really good in how I'm physically showing up and expressing myself. I now get compliments on how I look every day. It's been a fun expression of creativity and being able to buy a nice brand of clothing.
I love that. And my final question, though I'm sure I could be here with you for many more hours, is one of the things I love about the women who listen to the show and the women who are on the show. Everyone is able to offer support and help each other. All of us are experts in some areas and can give in other areas. What are you calling in right now? What is it that we, the community, can do to further evangelize something you're working on, something you're needing? What do you need? What do you want?
It's funny because when you were teeing up that question, I thought the question is, what can you give the audience? And that was what came to mind. If someone is wondering, how do I adopt that informational interview approach to create opportunities for myself? I have literally a whole Zoom training on it, playbooks, all of it. If you shoot me a DM on Instagram at Meredith Noble, I am happy to give that to anybody because I think it is the foundation of any dream. And I call it the dreamy customer journey map. So that would be my gift to the audience. And then I'd say what I need is support on going pro on social media. So if someone is like, yep, I've got some good resources for that, then like I would love to get, I want to go pro, I want to stop being an amateur and learn from the best. If they have any resources and ideas on that, that would be one area I'm trying to solve.
Meredith, what a gift and a pleasure to have you here today. How you think about things, what's important to you, how you're navigating your own expansiveness with the world as you navigate the expansiveness of your business. Congratulations on everything.
Thanks.
And I'm so grateful to have you in my vortex.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're having these conversations because I'm literally up against the pain point of why this exists. We're now at this new level of wealth and I have no one in my world to ask. So what you're doing is providing so much value as we, figure out, especially as women, like, what does it mean to actually hold wealth when this is a little bit of a new game for us.
No joke. Thank you, my love.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Getting Rich Together. Please take a minute to subscribe. And if you like this episode, I'd love it if you could share it with a friend who is ready to elevate their financial future. Until next time, let's keep getting rich together.